Mama, I got bad news, bad news. I've been rolling with some bad dudes, bad dudes. I've been trying to get a bag too,
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Ashes to Awesome podcast, Rising in Recovery. Our podcast provides light, hope, and understanding about addiction and mental health to those living within that life and the people who love them. This episode is brought to you by Together We Can, where Canada recovers from addiction. That's twcrecoverylife.org. Hey, listeners. Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Ramble on the Ashes to Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Chuck LaFlange, and joining me today is my co-hosts. First up is Carl the Atheist. How you doing today, Carl?
Doing great, Chuck.
Good stuff. Dr. Lisa, how are you today?
I'm very good, Chuck. How are you?
Awesome. I'm very good, thank you. Very good. And Rich Johnston is back after a failed attempt last week, and quite the ordeal, right? So, but I wanted to have Rich back on because some of the things he said last week he's insightful, he's smart, he's in the know about all the things when it comes to, or seems to be anyway. He's impressing me, which granted isn't that hard, but no, generally smart. How you doing today, Rich?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you back. So this is going to be our third attempt now. Of course, our first attempt at an episode, it wasn't your end of things that went bad, but you know, we did get, it was a weird choppy one. And then last week, I don't know if I explained to you what happened after, you know, yours didn't work out. I had to, I basically lost a month of my life editing that episode and trying to make it flow. So that was awesome. Right? But hey, it builds character. So it looks like you got a stable internet connection today, and well, I'm really glad for that. So,
Dude, I hope it stays stable. I'm not in front of the Starbucks and stuff, obviously, but that I live in a rural area is the polite way to say it. And it's just part of it is just the internet is shoddy.
Yeah, that's country life for you, right? Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that I was living out in the sticks myself, so I appreciate that. Some days Netflix, you know, wasn't a thing. Some days.
Dude, I'm just grateful when I wake up in the morning and water comes out of the tap. You know.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, fair enough. So, you're an interventionist, Risk. Why don't you give us a little synopsis of your history? You know, what gets us there. I mean, we don't want your whole story because that's not what this episode's about. But how do you get to a point where you're an interventionist, and kind of start from there?
Dude, it's weird, and I'm not going to suck up too much time, but basically, it can happen different for anybody because the fact is that like anybody can go around and say that they're an interventionist, and they do, and it's not. So you know, I didn't really start feeling comfortable calling myself an interventionist until I had the licensure to do interventions, my CIP. So,
okay, CIP. What's that?
A certified intervention professional.
Okay. Yep.
But for me, more or less, it happened like I was a lion, thieving, scheming dope fiend. And that's just how I choose.
Okay.
That's how I choose to identify. And I met some folks.
Fair enough.
That's not everybody. That's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's all of you.
Well, pretty sure not Lisa. At the very least, definitely not Lisa.
I mean, it's the ones who you least suspect. You know.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
I'm watching you, Lisa. Dude, I ended up at a treatment center. I met some people who helped me out with that problem. And then I remember sitting in treatment saying, I will never work in treatment. I will never be a therapist, a social worker, a case manager. I'll never do any of that because all of these people have personality disorders. They're strange. And there's like something wrong with all of them. So I got out of treatment and lasted. I don't hear you, Chuck.
You're muted.
There
it is.
So I want to interrupt you. There, Rich. Yeah. I've not been around a whole ton of these people, but personality disorders is not like I've kind of thought they're all really kind of nice, and maybe things are different down there south of the border, but it seems kind of an odd thing. And the other thing that's odd about that is everybody in like detox or treatment he wants to be a counselor. That's right. So you're kind of different in everything you've said so far. But continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, dude. Well, okay. First thing, like I say, personality disorder, kind of tongue in cheek, because
Of course.
on one hand, like I said, like I had this awful problem, and they helped me out with it. They didn't really want anything from me in return. Um, they were, but they were just weird, I guess, is my way of saying it. They just came across as odd to me. Now, with that being said, I was living under a bridge, dude. And not that's not tongue in cheek or metaphorical. I literally like my home was under a bridge, or in a tent off the side of an exit ramp. So maybe it was just that they were members of a civilized society. Maybe that looked like a personality disorder from where I was sitting. Uh, Maybe that's the case. But they were, yeah, but to this day, man, they a lot of those guys who brought me up, they're weird in the most beautiful and wonderful way, but they are just strange folks. They're an eclectic group of people. Uh,
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay.
and then what was the other thing? Oh, that everybody. Yeah, dude, and that everybody around me,
Yeah. Yeah.
dude. I was on like a baker's dozen treatment centers. So I'd been through that. I had been through, I'm gonna get out of here and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna be a blah 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 blah. So it was like when my peers would say stuff like that, and they're on treatment 3, 2, treatment number 1, or it came out as cringy to me. It's like, it looks, yeah, they look like gods to you guys, but like, I'd been through before, and I just felt differently.
Yeah.
Um,
Fair enough. Okay.
but
Yeah.
anyway, man, I felt I just one day I was just smoking a cigarette and I heard the call, and it said, it was like, go work in treatment. It wasn't like an audible thing, but like it was just like this thought that like was deeply
Yeah.
implanted in my brain, and it was like, go work in
Well,
treatment.
after some of the stories you were telling us last week, I gotta wonder if it was motivation. I don't know. Of course, none of that stuff made it into the recordings, and you're probably
Good.
probably a good thing at that. But yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that
Oh,
was.
Rich,
Yeah.
Rich, how does one get a CIP certificate?
Oh my goodness,
Is
man.
that like through a community college, or is that through a treatment center, or
Basically, like, have a son, sacrifice it upon an altar, sign your name in a drop of blood. I mean, like, they want a lot, dude.
There we go. Here we are back to this shit again. Okay. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
No, they want a lot. No, seriously,
All
no. It's
right.
probably, it's not as much as, probably a lot of things, but like it's through the PCB, which is the Pennsylvania Certification Board, and you can go look at all the requirements online at pacertboard.org. But it's like, you have to have worked in treatment for so many hundreds of hours and have so many hundreds of hours of education in like specific domains, and then you have to have like clinical supervision, facilitating interventions. You have to carry like $1 million insurance policy for malpractice.
Of course.
so it's very similar to like a trade certificate then?
Probably. I never had a trade certificate, so I don't
As
know,
far
but
as
probably.
yeah, as far as time put in and all of that, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
okay.
But yeah, man.
Continue though, Rich.
Yeah. So I didn't hear anything, but I just felt this tug, like you need to go work in treatment. Um,
Yep.
so long story short, I did, and then I worked in a bunch of treatments and tried out different stuff, and tried to find out what I.
So when you say you worked in treatments, what did you do? Like were you a counselor? Were you like
Dude, I did
were you?
I did low voltage electricity and like just various handyman kind of stuff before I got clean, and
Oh, okay.
I really
Okay.
didn't want to work in treatment. So my response to this call was like, okay, I'll go work in treatment. So I applied to be a maintenance man at a treatment center. I was like, all right,
So
I'm technically
okay.
doing
Yeah.
what the call said to do. And then I ended up not getting that job, and they were like, hey, you know what? But we have another position you'd be great for, and it was clinical associate, which was just that center's way of like saying a tech, like just a behavioral health tech.
Okay.
So, you know,
Okay.
very like some light group facilitation, light charting, and then a lot of custodial duties. like taking attendance, stuff like that. So that was the first job, and then I did a whole bunch of different stuff in treatment. And like the quick run through there is like I did that, and then I became a case manager from there at the same treatment center. Then I got into state funded stuff. I worked as a counselor, an unlicensed counselor at a state funded MAT IOP. I helped them write out some policies and procedures, and then also for the state, this was the state of Tennessee at the time. They started a peer recovery navigator program. So I would respond to survivors of overdoses, and it was my job to try to get them into
Okay.
treatment
Yep.
from there. So I did that for a while.
Oh, wow.
That was a really sad job. I could rail on about that. It was a really sad.
And through all of this, all of these positions, and it sounds like you're kind of moving up through the ranks. This is without official education. This is just your experience within the industry, kind of moving you forward. Is that accurate at this point, or?
Dude, yeah, I mean that like as far as education,
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
a
Yeah.
high school diploma and a bunch of time on the
Yep. Yep.
streets, and I've got more fentanyl still stuck in my belly button than most people have ever done. So,
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to take that to take away from you at all. You're obviously a very intelligent person, and the few times that we spoke, I've taken that from you that you've been, very knowledgeable. So I wondered about the education part, or if it was just more lived experience, I guess, on this side of things, right?
no, yeah, no, dude, I appreciate it. Yeah, I have a high school education, and then like there's a bunch of like individual like education mods that like I had to do just to get some of my certificates. But like I don't. What I say all the time is like I'm not. I don't think that I'm a smart person, but I hang around a lot of really smart people, and sometimes I remember some of the stuff they say, and I'm kind of able to,
Okay, yeah. There you
kind of able to like formulate ideas based off that. So the the
go.
more
God forbid one of us takes a compliment, right? Yeah.
well, that's just what like, dude, I
Yeah.
stand on the shoulders of giants. That's all. Like there's people who really been really smart and a lot of like original thought. And I'll get there one day. I'll come up with my own intervention model and as an amalgamation of everybody else's work, and that seems to kind of be the path. But like, no, dude, there's just been so many genius level people who came before me who like I've been lucky enough to like study under and have supervision from and just learn a lot of really cool stuff. And
Okay.
also, combine that with like, the time that I spent living under that bridge was a hell of a learning experience.
Well, there's something to be said for that lived, right? I mean, it's something else, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, fast forward us to
And
where you're an
actually,
actual interventionist. So let's do that.
yeah, so I do a bunch of treatments, a bunch of different work in treatment center, and then at some point I'm working in a treatment center, a place called Journey Pure down in Tennessee, and I'm working for this lady named Brenna, and Brenna wouldn't care if I said her name. Her name is
Okay.
Brenna O'Brien. Brenna is super dope. She's at like top tier human being, and she was the first one who gave me like a chance at like a big boy job in treatment because I don't have a degree. Um,
Yeah.
but she thought that I'd be good at it, and she gave me a shot. And
Okay.
she hired me on to do some work, and then eventually I was doing pretty good for her. And I think she liked me, and I liked her. And Earl
Mm-hmm.
Hightower was putting on a training in town. Who Earl Hightower is, big name interventionist, and I had caught wind that he was coming to
Okay.
town and doing this training, and I really wanted to go, but I couldn't afford the ticket on my own, and I didn't think highly enough of myself that like I could even ask my work to send me. Brenna just calls me out of the blue, and she's like, "Yo, Rich, there's Earl Hightower's coming doing this training. I want for you to go." And
Sometimes the universe provides, eh? Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'll definitely go," because I like by this time like I'm sucked in. Like I'll nerd out on this stuff. It's fun. I enjoy it. Um,
Yeah.
so I was excited to go, and I went and like I paid close attention. And I took notes, and that was kind of like the story of me. Like anything that I do know, like in like an intellectual realm as far as addiction goes. Like it's like that, like showing up to Earl's training and like not treating it like a marketing event, but like listening to what this person who's been doing it for a really long time and is really good at it has to say, writing down some of the stuff, rereading it periodically, really like trying to
Mm-hmm.
soak all of that in. So that was when like I first started doing interventions, and then I started doing some interventions on the side and wanted to like kind of get my supervision and stuff going. But then COVID happened. So
Fucking COVID.
yeah, man. So that everything got kind of slow, I think, for everyone for a while. So I took another job and worked as a case manager at a treatment center for a while. And then I got back to it. I ended up, leaving that treatment center and going into private practice and starting Rosecrest Recovery Services with my wife. And that's it. I ended up going under supervision through Patty Pike, who's another OG of intervention, to get my
Okay.
actual
Okay.
CIP.
Okay. Last time we spoke, or not last time, the time before, you had spoke about different methods or different what's the word I'm looking here for? Different kinds of
Models.
interventions. Models of interventions.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, without breaking them all down, what are, say, like the three most? I don't know how many there is, right? So is there like 20, or is there like 3, or is there kind of give us an idea of what a couple of those are about, maybe, and we can kind of.
Yeah, man. I don't know how many there are, but like the three, I'm trying to think, like the three most common are going to be a Johnston model, and that's like your kind of typical like classic Coke model of intervention. Um,
So like the one we would see on TV.
yeah, well,
or like.
yes, like that, with and bearing in mind that it's dramatized. It just is, and it's not to say it's inauthentic necessarily. But I've just done a ton of Johnston model interventions, and like, you just very rarely do you get the fireworks that make good TV. It's really, much. It's just a conversation at the end of the day, dude. All of this stuff it's just a conversation.
Okay.
So that.
So what is the Johnston model? Like, what is that? That's like. What differentiates that between the next model we talk about? What's the defining?
They're just procedurally they're different, from the ground up almost. So like a Johnston model will happen basically in 4 parts, where we'll have an initial contact, and that's where like I'll get my assessment done. I'll like interview all of the principals involved, and then so that's kind of step 1. Then we move into pre-intervention. That's where I will gather all the principal people involved except for the IP, and we will go through exactly how we're going to have this conversation that we're about to have. The conversation is centered around a goal that we define right then and there. Usually it's to get somebody to accept inpatient help for a drug or alcohol problem. From there we have the actual intervention. That's showtime. We'll sit down, we'll have a conversation with this person, and the conversation is very structured. That's my job is to bring order into this situation.
Script it with the.
Yeah, they'll write some letters. I don't like it to be necessarily scripted because it needs to be authentic.
Directed, maybe is a better way to put that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in my mind, dude, that like one of the number one weapons of addiction is chaos, and like what I notice a lot of time in the family systems is what my IP will do is just inject a little bit of chaos into the system, and it throws everything on its head. If you three are doing an intervention on me, and you all want for me to go to treatment, but I'm like, well, Carl's an atheist. Why is he even here? He doesn't even blah blah blah. And Lisa, did you know Chuck did this thing behind your back? That it's just now there's chaos. Now it's derailed. Now you guys don't even remember that you want me to go to treatment, because like Carl's just yelling at me, and now Lisa and Chuck are yelling at each other.
Should be $100 on the way up.
Just deflecting the attention.
All 3 of you individually off at the corner are giving me $100 and have no idea that it's happening.
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah, exactly. Or just any level of chaos. Or if I just come to you guys, then I through whatever. There's a million different ways that it can go down.
Of course there's. Okay, so what differentiates that between the next model we talk about then? Like, because that sounds pretty standard, like what I would expect, I guess, right? And I want Lisa to jump in on this too, because Lisa has some experience with intervention, right, in her own family unit, right? So I'm curious to see where your thoughts are going right now, Lisa, as we're talking. So.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the other models first, Rich? Actually,
Yeah,
to interject that the one you've described so far is kind of like what I think of when I think of an intervention. So I'm curious, like, what are other?
Yeah, so am I. That's a good point, Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So that Johnston model is the OG. That's Vernon Johnson. He wrote the book, literally the book Intervention. So that's the oldest one. That's, for better or for worse, that's one of the more common ones that I guess you'd see. But other models are starting to take precedence. So like the model that I would use, I guess, next most frequently would be a Can-Am model. It's also sometimes called a case management model. And that's a lot less rigid. That one's a lot more flexible, and that has its pros and its cons in my experience. Um,
Okay. But that doesn't give me a sense of, like, what do you mean more flexible? What?
so like
I'm having a hard time picturing anything other than what you said. So I feel like, Lisa, are you in that same place?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So, for instance, like that, like I've got a case management intervention going right now, and um, the family calls and we do the assessment, and I deduce through the assessment that this person is not going to be appropriate for a Johnson model intervention because it's a surprise model intervention. He has
okay.
like there are paranoid features to the stuff that he's got going on. He's just not going to do well, and he's patriarchal in his nature um, within the family system. So it's just on multiple levels. It's not going to work out that we do any kind of surprise model intervention on this guy, least of all a Johnson model. So I
Okay.
decide that we need to do something else. So I say, okay, we're going to move to a case management approach. Um, More or less, what happens from there is I'll still go through and interview all of the principals involved. But at that point, I'll get introduced to the IP. Um,
Okay.
and I'll say something like, hey, man, my name's Rich, and I'm a friend. You don't know me, but I'm your friend. And your family's asked for some help. There's a problem here. And my job is to make sure that everybody, including and maybe most importantly, you, gets heard as we navigate what's going on here. Um, so,
Okay. So that's a fundamental difference for sure now.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah.
So it's that. So
But I mean, there's still a surprise element, I imagine. Like, because I feel like that initial, hey man, I'm your friend. Like, I just feel like, again, if I think back to my brother at the time, my brother would have been like, you're not my effing friend, and I don't want to talk to you.
and so I don't know.
And so I feel like there's still that surprise element, right? Of all of a sudden there's some random guy named Rich looking at me telling me he's my friend. Like, so I'm still stuck on trying to understand, and I'll just keep listening because I'm sure it's going to become clear. But to me, I still feel like you're a stranger and you're being introduced into this individual's life because the family has sought your help and they're trying to get help for their loved one.
Sure.
So I feel like right now, I feel like there's a lot of similarities so far.
Yeah, and they're not. And at the end of the day, they're all interventions. And that if you're looking for like stark differences, these are all different ways of doing the same thing. So that nothing's going to be
Yeah.
too terribly contrasted, I don't think. At least in the grand scheme. But yeah, Lisa, you're right. I can definitely see how you would say that, or how you would look at it that way, because that's not wrong. I guess the key difference is that we're me and the family, we're inviting you into a process versus,
Ambushing you.
yeah, I mean,
Because
ambush is a
that's what I
harsh word.
picture when I picture. It is, but hey, if you're the person who's suffering an addiction, I think ambush is probably the fucking word that comes to mind. No, I'm not taking away from what you're doing.
Yeah.
For me personally, if I walk in and my whole family's there that I haven't talked to, and oh yeah, right, like that's an ambush. Right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But more or less, yeah. Like in a case management style, like, hey man, there's a process going on here, and I'm inviting you to take a part of it because I think it's important that your voice gets heard. And then it is exactly as I say when I say it's an invitation, and they can accept or decline. And there's ways to move forward with either response.
Really?
And is the case management model, is that one something that is intended, like when you have that initial introduction? Because when I think of an intervention, it's like the goal is that an hour or 4 hours or 6 hours from now, you're getting in the car with the interventionist and you're flying off somewhere to go to treatment. With case management model, is it more long-term, like more of a process and like building a relationship? And
Yeah, exactly that. And that's like a key factor in when I'm deciding what kind of model I'm going to deploy, because that, like, if you're using fentanyl and you got 3 overdoses under your belt this month, we're not doing the case management, because those are like, I do like jujitsu, I'm into like MMA and stuff like that. The way that I think of the Johnston model is we've got a really good chance for a first round knockout. Boom. Like, I can know the family for 2-3 days. We can have an intervention, come in, bang, somebody's in treatment, and we need that. We need that to happen fast. Um, so nobody who is using fentanyl, or I suspect is using fentanyl, do I ever do case management style interventions on. Families, if they call me and they want case management style interventions for a person like that, I tell them no, because it's not worth the risk that I perceive off of that. But yeah, to answer your question, it is much longer. Most of the time I'll do Johnson model interventions over a 30-day service period. Case management style interventions usually will happen over a 6-month period. And you got to be willing to accept like less than ideal results out of a case management style intervention too.
Okay. Does that help you, Lisa? It certainly helps me to
yeah.
understand, getting a better idea of it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, for sake of the conversation, then, Rich, what's a third way?
Um, those are
Fundamental differences, anyway.
let's see. Those are the two that I operate off of. I mean, 95% of the interventions I do are those. You can get into like Arise has gotten really popular. Personally, I don't.
What's that?
Arise. I'm trying to remember the woman's name who started it. And I can't remember her name. But basically, the Arise model kind of hinges off of like an escalation of impact um, to the IP, and that's one like I'm not going to be as well versed in it, just because
Okay.
kind of after getting like through the first chapter and kind of understanding what Arise is and kind of seeing the way some of them play out, I just didn't love it. I just didn't think it was something that I was going to be able to practice effectively, so I didn't pursue it too far.
Okay.
But there's a ton. There's Arise.
Okay.
There's Love First. Jeff J. I have Jeff's book right here. Actually, here's a free plug for Jeff. Uh, Jeff has Love First. I'm still chewing on that one. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to do it.
Okay.
For those just listening, the book was called Love First.
Oh yes, that's right too. We got it. Yeah.
Love First by by
Not
Jeff
not
J.
everybody's
and Deborah
watching.
J.
All right. So, Kyle, you got something you want to throw in here? Carl, do you got something you want to throw in here?
I guess I kind of get the sequences that you're going off of here, like the long game, the short game. Is there anything that really, is there like one intervention that really stands out for you that either was a great success or something maybe you consider an utter failure that really stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few that I consider great successes, and my great successes, I tell my families this in pre-intervention, is when during the actual intervention I say basically nothing.
Yeah.
And they're boring and they would make for awful TV, but it happens that way a lot of the times where I'll come in, the whole family will be there. We'll bring the IP into the situation. I'll shake my IP's hand. I'll say, "Hey, man, my name's Rich. You probably know what this is, and everybody's got some stuff that they just want to say to you." And the family will go through, and they'll all say their piece. And the last person in line will say, "Chuck, will you go to treatment today?" And then there's deafening silence for about 14 seconds, which feels like about 15 minutes if you're not used to it. And then they say, yeah, I'll go. And that.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick minute and tell you about a couple things that are going on in the Ashes to Awesome world. First up, the website's up and running now. We got some swag, and there's a couple t-shirts, some hoodies, pretty simple stuff, but every dollar you spend helps us keep spreading the message. And of course, coming up on August 31st is the International Overdose Awareness Day, and most of the swag right now on the store is branded towards that. So it's the official color purple with their branding kit and the logo and all that stuff on it, right? It's some pretty cool stuff. And again, you're helping us to keep spreading the message every time you buy something there. So check it out while you're on our website, a2apodcast.com. Check out my new ebook. It's called Turning Sorry into Thank You, The Surprising Power of Gratitude and Humor. It's a quick little inspirational read. It's only $5. And again, every time you do this stuff, guys, you're helping us to continue spreading the message. Stay tuned for more commercials about some upcoming fundraisers. We've got one out in Mission, BC with the Mission Community Services Society. And they're doing like an overnight thing where some people are coming in to live as if they were underhoused for 24 hours and kind of face some of the challenges that these people have to face every day. And they're doing it to raise money for a new medical unit that they've got out there, a motor home that's been repurposed into a mobile medical unit. The other one coming up next month, Mike Lockman from Airdrie, Alberta. He heads up the Sober Friends Society out there. He is going to be walking from Edmonton to Airdrie with a 5-pound ball and chain attached to his ankle. Him and another friend of his are anyway, and they're doing that to raise funds for mental health. So there'll be lots more coming up on that, guys. And actually, a bunch of the Ashes Are Awesome team is going to be out on that walk for at least one day of it anyway. We'll go out there and support him. We'll be out there, and of course, our Ashes Are Awesome t-shirts and swag from the store. So check it out, guys, and stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Back to the show.
And then I have a driver outside, and they get in the car and go. So there's a few that are very smooth, and those are the ones that I really, really like to have very boring interventions. That's what I really want to provide to my families.
I suppose, right? And I like to imagine, no, I don't like to imagine. I imagine that by the time a family gets to that point, that the IP, by this point, and I've talked about this before in past episodes, that feeling of exhaustion has got to be there by then. But like if we're at a point now where the family's calling you at all, never mind has paid for your services and has you in their home, that the IP by that point has got to be often anyway, just that sense of exhaustion, right? Where maybe it's a relief or and I'm guessing, but
sometimes, and I think a lot. It depends on like what day or what week, we might catch them on, and I try to time those things because it might maybe what part of the day do we try to catch them in, like I never do interventions for alcoholics at night for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And we don't do them first thing in the morning either. We do them just a little bit before lunch.
No. Oh yeah, that's the golden time, is it, or the sweet spot?
Yeah, exactly. I need you to have about 2 maybe 3 drinks in you when I come to talk to you. And then
now with something like meth and fentanyl on the scene, I mean, time. What's time?
Exactly.
Right.
And dude, that's where.
So that's got to be a lot harder to find that.
Well, and so like Carl, like when.
I think like we were.
Go ahead, Lisa.
We were told, in my brother's case, like he wanted it done early, because again there was meth use, and he was like, if he's high on meth, there's no hope.
Yep.
Right. It's not going to happen.
That meth is a hard one for interventions, and that's that speaks to like Carl, like you mentioned was one come to mind that's a complete and utter failure. Ultimately, no, because the intervention is really happening on a family dynamic, and I'm given the family tools with which to continue to address a broken dynamic. But as far as this person definitely did not go to treatment, we went into a meth trailer in Alabama, and this poor guy, he was a gay guy living in Alabama, so he's got a hard way to go as it is. I don't know if you guys know anything about the state of Alabama, but that's an American joke that you Canadians don't get.
We make lots of jokes about Alabama.
Man, this poor guy, he was living in a meth trailer in Alabama, and when we showed up, he was spun out on meth, and he was first of all, he couldn't hear anything that we were saying. He couldn't really grasp anything that was coming out of anybody's mouth.
No
Um,
kidding.
you know what I mean? And then on top of that, he was just methed up and ready for a fight. So he just immediately started
Yeah.
screaming, and we tried to talk to this guy for upwards of an hour, and he just shouted us
Yep.
down. So that guy, he was not going to treatment that day. Um,
Hmm.
that's fine. We'll because you're going to come down eventually. So that's what I told the family. In that case, the family ultimately ended up deciding that they wanted to give up. Um,
Yeah.
which is sad, but yeah, there's ways to address that. So it's to me like that doesn't have to be a failure unless you're ready to tap.
Yeah. 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 I can't. Yeah. Well, I can't imagine. So, Lisa, your experience. Um, this has got to be bringing up some memories for you, obviously. How does it compare to some of the stuff Rich has said? And Rich, I don't know if, well, maybe to the listeners, because not everybody's listened to episode 101, where Lisa gave us her story. And Rich, for yourself, even go back and have a great listen, because their story is a great one, that's for sure. So, and anybody that is listening right now, episode 101 is Lisa's giving us her story of fighting alongside her brother. And what do you got, Lisa? This has got to be bringing up something for you. So,
Yeah, it totally is. And it's funny because I don't get I mean, you've called me out on this before. I don't get emotional very often. And like literally just like thinking about this, like makes me start to feel emotional. I don't know if it's because, my brother is 4 months sober yesterday. And so I don't know if it's just the contrast of just thinking back to all of that. But that was about 4.5 years ago, I guess it was. And again, this was already 18 years into my brother's struggles with addiction. But things had really kind of gone off the rails for him, and he had struggled with cocaine and crack and opiates, and then what happened was about 4.5 years ago he found crystal meth. And he went from sort of holding his life together, continuing to have jobs, a home, a family, and then it just all went in the shitter when meth came on the scene. But so my parents had been speaking with Andy, who I don't think you've had on yet, so I look forward to that day. Andy's an interventionist here. He's based out of Vancouver. And so they flew him out to Calgary to come do this intervention with my brother. And it was very much, I guess, the Johnston model. And I would say he felt ambushed. We weren't trying to ambush him, but I'm pretty sure that that's what he would tell you it felt like. And so, I remember we were at my parents' house, and he was because him and my sister-in-law lived up in Edmonton. We're down in Calgary. And so my sister-in-law had managed to get him to agree to come down for a day or night or whatever it was. And we've always kept in contact with my brother, right? We've never kind of cut him off. And so she managed to get him to come down, which in and of itself was a challenge, right? When he was using like that, because obviously being around us, he still used, but he wasn't using as much. He wasn't in the lifestyle, and we didn't see him a lot during those years, but she got him to come down. And again, it was all this pressure around, it needs to be early in the morning, like we need to get him before he uses meth that morning. So my parents, myself, were sitting here in the house with the interventionist and my sister-in-law. And again, like I even think back for her, like what that must have been like, because it's like, she's like, and again, I know this is not what it is, but I can see how there would have been a part of her that would have felt like, almost like she was, what's the word, like leading a lamb to slaughter, like she knew where she was taking him, and he didn't know, and she knew he didn't know. And I can imagine that, and I've never actually asked her about those moments, but I imagine that would have been really hard for her. But I still remember, I can still remember them walking up the front steps. And, we were sort of because the living room, you first come into the house, you're in that living room space, which is where we were doing it. And I can still remember the look on his face, like looking into the door. And I think just seeing us like sort of standing there, because normally if he would come, like we don't like all stand around the door like a welcoming committee, right? So I think when he came in and saw us all there, and then this guy he didn't know, I think he knew right away what was happening. And yeah, it was just like, I don't know, Rich, like what feedback you get from families. I mean, obviously if it's successful, that's what they're going to focus on. But I'm like, even if it had been successful, like, it's just, I did not like it. I didn't enjoy it. It felt shitty, gross, like, I don't know the right word, like, and it was not successful. You know, I think it was Carl who, when I talked about this in the past, like, was like, you know, but a seed was planted. And I believe that because it was 4 years later that my brother actually reached out to that interventionist and said, like, I'm ready. And so there was a seed planted. But during that, you know, it was just, and it was the escalation too that I think made me uncomfortable. Like, it started out sort of gentle and caring and loving, and, you know, we're worried about you and we love you and all of that. And then, of course, recognizing his resistance and that he was not going, it started, I think, out of desperation. What was coming out of people's mouths was just, you know, like the contingent threats. If you don't do this, then we will do this. And that's where it just, like, I don't know, like, even now, like, I feel like it gives me like a visceral reaction just thinking about it. And he ended up, you know, getting up and was like, I gotta get some air. And he went outside. He didn't have car keys or anything, and he went outside and I think just walked around the front yard. And in the end, like, I remember the interventionist looking at us and he's like, he's not going. Like, there's no way, this is not happening today. But he went outside and went for a walk with my brother. And, you know, we were just sort of told, because obviously we weren't there for that, but that I think a lot of that conversation was just like, look, like, this is not going to end well for you if you stay doing what you're doing, and you know that. Here's my number, and, you know, when you're ready, then just call me and I'll help you. And it took 4 years, but he called him, and that was, you know, that particular interventionist was on his way to Thailand, I think, when my brother did reach out. But so he got a colleague of his to step in and help, and my brother was on his way to Thailand, I don't know, a few days later.
Devin McGuire, yeah, right. Of course, we've had him on the show now for 3 episodes, but two appearances. One of the episodes being, or 2 of the episodes being one interview. That was something else. Something else for sure. Actually, Devin is, well, of course, Rich, you're my favorite guest, and, you know, before that, Lisa was my favorite guest. And I'm just Devin has been,
and Carl too. Carl was your
and
favorite.
Carl's never been a guest. He's always been a co-host,
Okay.
right? So, oh no, that's not true. You were a guest, right, back in the early days. Anyway, and he was, you know, but he was a subject in the stories too. But Devin was probably, yeah, he was crazy. He's a fucking great guy. He's a great guest. From my episode description, it was laugh, cry, repeat, right? Because that's what we did the entire episode, right? So it was something else. But Lisa, I'm the contrast. So what you're saying, and I'm wondering how this is playing now for you, Rich. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my thoughts on how I want to ask this question. Lisa's expressing like how she didn't like it, how she had this kind of crappy feeling, and she said that before about it. How do you respond to that, Rich? Like, if you know, or how do you respond to that? Okay, right? Maybe that's just the right question.
First thing, Lisa, I hate that happened. You know, I hate that you had a shitty experience with intervention. I don't, you know, nothing I say takes that away. I guess I would respond with a question. Do you feel like your family would overall, despite any discomfort or yucky feelings, but in the most tangible way possible, do you feel like overall your family was helped or further injured by what happened on that day?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were
You should be a
definitely not
podcast host.
hindered. Definitely not hindered, you know. And if I will say that a positive that came out of it, you know, like, I actually think Andy stayed and like had dinner with us, like, after, you know, this all didn't work. And I think there was a lot of value in knowing that Andy existed in the world, you know, like, and that's one of the things I've said about this podcast is, like, you know, it was like 20-something year journey with my brother. And yeah, we've had, you know, he's gone to treatment before, and there are people who are still in our lives as a family who we met through my brother's, you know, past goes at recovery. But I think, knowing Andy was out there, knowing Andy would be out there, I do think that that was a positive thing. I mean, Andy was great. Like, he's passionate, he's compassionate, he cares a lot. And so it felt good to feel less alone by having involved him. And to be honest, like, I don't know if anything could have been done differently that day that would have made that feel good to me. Like, I think it's just,
So
we were and I think this, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I want for you to jump back in, but the fourth part of a Johnston model intervention that I didn't talk about earlier, I think I got through the first three parts, is the post intervention. Did this person stay after the fact and do any kind of post intervention work with you guys?
More with my parents. Like, I had a very little girl at the time. She was like a year old, and so I didn't hang around a lot. But that's when he had stayed after and had spoken with my parents. I can't speak to the details of what was said there, but I think what was communicated back to me was just that, look, all we can do, we can't force him until he's ready. And the takeaway was, like, he's not at a place where he's ready today. But so what do we do to ensure that when the day comes that he's hopefully ready, that we're all sort of ready to go, And I mean, Andy kept in communication with my family, on and off over the 4 years prior to my brother reaching out to him again, and was always, like, available to us. I know there were times when my parents reached out to him for advice and stuff. But again, I mean, in an intervention, aside from us having taken him, we were just joking about this earlier. I used to joke about this when my brother was still using, like, get some guys and kidnap him, But I mean, short of us kidnapping him, like, he wasn't going that day. And I don't think that it was a failure in the process. I don't think it's in any way like a reflection on Andy or his abilities. I think it's my brother, and my brother was just not going anywhere that day. And I mean, had he gone, I would have been super excited, but I think I would still sit here and tell you that it's just, it's not nice. Like, it didn't feel nice to me. But as it's been said many times on the show in these conversations, like, families don't hire interventionists early in this process. Like, by the time you're getting to that, it's like, we had done the pleading, he had lost the jobs, he'd suffered consequences. We had all tried to individually do our things. His wife had tried to do her thing, and it was like things weren't working. And so, like, I don't know that it's ever going to feel good, but I think, I care about my brother. I'm, like, my brother's number one fan. Like, so him walking up the stairs and having this shocked look and I think scared too, like a scared look on his face, like, nothing's going to make that feel good to me, and I don't know, like, I don't know, does anyone ever go through an intervention and go, wow, that was fun, wish we could do that again? Like, I don't know if that, like, is that what we expect? Like, maybe it's just, you're dealing with something that doesn't feel nice. Like,
You're absolutely right. It's uncomfortable, and I've been in a bunch of interventions, and it never there's never not that, like, kind of cringe factor of, like, this is a confrontation. I'm in like it or not, this is a confrontation. Now, does that necessarily mean that it has to be negative? I think is really the important question to ask, because I believe confrontation is a part of life, and there's a way to have healthy confrontations. That's what I think. And I don't know.
Rich, like, that's like a perfect way to put it, because I think in all my conversations about this, I've never really been able to put my finger on it, but I think you just did. It was not negative, but I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. And that's so for me. I don't know Andy, but I know that, like, hearing you say this, if if you were one of my families and you were feeling like that, then that rings all the bells for post intervention for me. So, first of all, like, you and I, we would have a conversation honestly, kind of like we're having on a podcast right now, and I would try to understand exactly how you felt. So, okay, you understand that this was positive and that it kind of needed to happen, but you're having some feelings surrounding this look on your brother's face and feeling like he's been like a lamb led to slaughter, and like he was ambushed and stuff like that. So all of that goes off in my mind, and I I'm not here to be anybody's therapist, at an intervention or in a post intervention. I want to understand that. I want to just talk about it briefly and let you know that, like, hey, I'm a safe person to talk to, and I want to make sure that you're in comprehensive and competent services that can start to unpack that with you. So, like, I'm at that point, like, um, I have therapists who I work with who are really good at, like, emotional enmeshment work, which I don't know that that's the case with you.
Explain that. Enmeshment. I've never heard that word.
So,
Emotional enmeshment.
like, when I hear Lisa say, and this is not a judgment, or and definitely not a diagnosis, but, like, when I hear Lisa say that her brother's discomfort brought her discomfort on a deep and persistent way, I hear that, this might be a relationship where they've gotten so close, that it's crossed the line into, like, okay, maybe Lisa has taken on, some of the emotional characteristics or emotional burden that her brother is going through.
For the few 4 months that Lisa and I have been talking, I would call that accurate. And keeping in mind, you are talking to a psychiatrist, so just the whole dynamic here is just like, holy shit, right? That's right. Yeah.
Which, and this is
But
probably
I
not
think,
the time or place, like, to go into all of that, like, with you particularly. But in my mind, if that was my intervention, then that just rings all the bells for me. I say in post intervention, and then I'm going to be on you, a few times a week. Lisa, have you gotten with the therapist that I referred you to? Are you talking about this stuff? Does it make any more sense to you now than it did on the day of the intervention? Are you feeling any differently? And just trying to.
so. Lisa, for you right now, on the two sides that we get from you, we have your lived experience as a loved one, and the professional side of you.
Yeah.
What's happening right now, right? Because I see an aha moment happening in your face, and to the listeners that can't see what's happening, but I can see you kind of going, right? Or
I
do I got that wrong?
I think what I am just thinking about is particularly sort of my evolution as the sister, right? And I've talked about this a bit, and maybe it was in 101 where it came up more, but, like, I remember, in the early days of my brother's addiction, and it had gotten really bad, obviously this was years into substance abuse, but it was when he'd first found crack cocaine that, again, life just went off the rails.
Oh yeah.
And I remember at that time, I was in grad school. I think I was like 22 or 23. And I absolutely felt that I had the ability, which is, now I know better. But it was like, I felt like I could save him, and it was my job to save him. Like, I very much. And like, the whole world, like, I had a very nice boyfriend at the time, and I was just like, I didn't care if he fell off the planet. Like, I was just like, get out of my way.
You've spoken about that, yeah.
Yeah, like, I walked into my, my master's thesis supervisor and basically said, don't know when I'll be back, I'm out. Like, everything in my life did not matter to me. Like, I would have gone to I think I would have absolutely sacrificed everything in my life to save my brother at that time. I think that in later years, including, like, at the intervention, I absolutely take on, like, I feel the emotions of my brother, but I feel the emotions of my patients. Like, I've talked about this before too, like, I will cry with my patients, I don't walk around the hospital like a blubbering mess, don't get me wrong, but, like, I do think that, and I don't feel bad about it. I think it's a strength of mine. Like, I actually feel that when I sit and listen to a person's story, and it's not something that I make myself do, it just happens, like, I feel like I'm in it. And I feel like I can feel my patients. And so, absolutely, like, am I taking on some of my brother's emotions in those moments? No question. The difference, I think, is I think I am at a place, and I think I've been in this place for about 10 years now, but it took me 15 years to get there. I know I can't save my brother. I know that sacrificing everything in my world is not going to benefit me or him. And so I approach it very differently. Like, I think that I'm in a place now where I don't feel that my brother's addiction ruins my life. and I think that I know how to hold certain boundaries with him. But yeah, like, and I don't know that, I think that part of that is just my personality, and no amount of education is going to change that. If I look at my brother, because I do this with strangers. So if I do with strangers, I'm going to do it with my brother. If I look at my brother and I see fear in his eyes and I see shock in his face, I feel it, and I just do. And that's just who I am. It's just what I think I do with that. Is that destructive to me or not? There was a time when it was destructive. It hasn't been for many years, which is a good thing. Because I think if you are highly sensitive and you don't have boundaries, you're in a world of trouble.
And I think too, like where you cross the line from, like just being a person who is not a psychopath and has like sympathy and empathy for those around you, into like enmeshment and even like codependency is exactly that. Is okay, well, what are you doing with it? Are you dropping your master's thesis irresponsibly, or are you making irresponsible and reckless decisions as a result of that? And also there's something to be said for acuity too. Am I in my brain, if I see someone who I love is going through something, yeah, absolutely, I should feel some kind of empathy. I am, if my wife is sad, I'm sad for my life, but also I think in a brain that's, and in a spirit in a way too, that's operating in a healthy manner. I think that there's the ability to separate those two things. There's a difference between I'm sad for you and you are sad, therefore I am sad. Does it,
True.
you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. Like, because it's kind of like at work, right? Like, I can sit with a patient and in a moment, stories can hit me and I can feel for people, and I have my own human emotions. But I've like, something that a lot of people close to me have said is like, how do you do this work and then go home? And I don't take my work home. And like, maybe even as someone who is highly sensitive, like to a shocking level, like I deal with bad stuff all the time, like terrible stories all the time. And I do not stay up at night thinking about this. Like, I don't. I very much am able to, what I do is I use the feelings that I experience for people, the empathy I have for people, to be their advocates. Like, I will pull out all the stops in my job. I will pull in all the services. I will do, like, I won't stop at anything to give people the best that I can give them in my role, right? It's like, can't save everybody, but I can pull in all the right services and all the right people and give people the best chance I can within my toolkit. And I do that, and I think that that's why I don't stay up at night, because I'm like, I'll do everything I can, and then beyond that, there's nothing more I can do. And I really don't, I don't perseverate on things and stay up at night in bed, unable to sleep thinking about this. Like, that thankfully doesn't happen. But like I said, could I have done what I do now when I was 22 years old? Maybe not.
Now, Rich, you kind of touched on, pardon me, post-intervention, but you were kind of talking about it in terms of the family. Is there any post-intervention work that you do with the IP that maybe you haven't talked about, like, or is it just you give them your card and you wait, or do you touch back, do you circle back with these people?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, before I answer that real quick, Chuck, is my upload's not frozen, is it? Because it's been stuck at 79 for a minute. I just want to make sure that does everything look good technically on your end?
We should probably ask Carl, because
Everything looks good. Everybody's got red dots.
Okay, sorry.
yeah, everyone's got red dots, and oh yeah, you're sitting at 79%, but you're still recording,
Okay.
so we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as post-intervention work with the actual IP, it can go one of two ways. Either my IP says yes at the time of the intervention, and then from there I act kind of as a liaison to the treatment center, and when I have to, a watchdog for the treatment center.
What do you mean there? What do you mean by that?
Well,
Does the client go with you, Rich? Like, when in a successful one, are they leaving with you?
no, they're leaving with my driver. Because exactly like what I'm saying about the post intervention, like with my family, is Ed Storty explained it beautifully, and he says that when you're doing an intervention, you're having a surgery. And in pre-intervention, you're making an incision. During the intervention, you're rearranging things the way that you need to. And if you don't do a post-intervention, the post-intervention is when you suture everything back up. So I've kind of learned, through the experience of people who have been doing it a lot longer than I have, that know that them getting in the car with me and going to treatment and then leaving my family with an open wound is a terribly irresponsible way to do things. So no, that I have people who work for me who are really good and competent people who are outside with the engine running, ready to take my IP to treatment.
So is that a standard practice, or is that something that you've started doing on your own, Rich?
Man, that's something that not everybody's doing that. A lot of interventionists are acting as transporters too, and I don't love it. To me, it's really not the right way to do things. Now, ultimately, who am I? You all do whatever you want, but like, if you want to work with me, then we're going to do things in a way that makes sense, because exactly like Lisa, how long ago was your brother's intervention?
4.5 years.
4.5 years ago. You still got a bad taste in your mouth from what happened. Like, to me, I want to immediately, like, while everything is still open, while it's all still fresh, I want to address all this stuff. I don't want to be in the car, like that. Anybody can come and do that. But, if you're my family, then you have a rapport with me now. We've spent 16 hours
I gotta say,
together.
So one of the fundamental, like one of the things that I take a lot of pride in with the show, right, is that we focus so much on the families, right, and that's what makes us different than pretty much all the other podcasts. It's pretty standard formula for most people in this genre anyway, most shows. What you're saying right now warms my heart, Rich. It really does, right? Because for every addict, was there 10 people that are like really severely affected by it? 5 people for sure, right? If you had to put an average to it. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to hit so hard with the show, and why we interview people like, why Lisa reached out in the first place. This is why she's even on our show, right? It's because, and it warms my heart, man. Like, it really does. And I think that, there's a reason that you and I are talking to each other now, because I am like, I'm welling up.
Dude,
right?
Well, that's the way, because here's what I think doesn't get enough play in the whole dynamic is that if my IP's going to treatment, he's for at least 30 days, and a lot of my IPs stay a lot longer than 30 days. He's going to be surrounded by therapists. He's going to have clinical staff on deck 24/7, surrounded by peers. He's going to have constant support. Whereas, hey, Lisa, guess what? You have work tomorrow. You ready for that after what you just went through? So, and that, like, yeah, those families, they need more attention, man. And a lot of my family members, they'll go, they will go to treatment centers of their own. They will go, usually not for a whole 30 days, but On Site is a center up in Tennessee that does really good, trauma codependency workshops, 7 days or so. Where I'll send
That's amazing.
Yeah, man, I'll send them up to that. You guys go get your own treatment.
Awesome. Yep. Hey, listen, I want to take a quick break here, and we'll continue down with this when we get back.
And now for a quick PSA brought to you by Revolution Recovery, helping men recover and become their best selves through support and treatment. They've been there and they understand.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan Bathgate from Kaleidoscope Wednesdays. I wanted to bring a public service announcement to you today about Narcan, or also known as naloxone. These kits have saved so many lives over the years. I can attest for that. Being in the industry for so long, I can tell you, since we've had the opioid crisis declared in 2016, it has saved thousands of lives, and I've watched it personally save hundreds of lives. These kits are small, easy to use. You can keep them in your glove box or in a cupboard in your home, and you never know when somebody's going to need them. If you have a hard time finding a Narcan kit in your area, just email us here at ashestoawesomepodcast@gmail.com. throw Narcan in the subject line, tell us where you are, and we'll do the legwork to find that for you. If you wanted to send me a question for my Kaleidoscope Wednesdays, again, email ashestoawesomepodcast@gmail.com. We will read that question on air, and I'll do my best to answer it in a comprehensive way. That's all I have for now, and we'll go back to the show. Thanks for listening.
3, 2, 1.
All right, so we're back from the break. Rich, you were in the middle of discussing post intervention. So, what's it look like when there's a successful one, and what's it look like when there's a not successful one?
So first thing is a language thing. All interventions are successful as long as the family dynamic is successfully intervened on. It has nothing to do with whether or not IP goes to treatment.
And the politician in Rich comes out. Look at that. Okay.
No, I don't. I pay way too many taxes to be a politician. So if my IP decides to go to treatment, then what? I talked myself into hot water saying that I'll act as like a liaison to the treatment center, or sometimes a watchdog if I need to. And
that's right too. Yes.
Yeah. You know, what do I mean by watchdog? I refer to really competent treatment centers, and I stand by all the referrals that I make, even at the best treatment centers in the world. Things happen, people fall through the cracks, and it's sad, but that's part of it. But my job is to, like I said, like kind of like watchdog for my patient and make sure that they're getting a coherent continuing care plan put together, and that the treatment center is doing everything they need to be to uphold the best quality of care.
Okay.
My IP doesn't go to treatment, then same thing. I stay on as case manager for the family, and then we move into kind of like I call it like this counter-strike approach. More or less, I will still same thing like Lisa, I was just mentioning to you. Like, I'm going to make sure that like whatever wounds are present as a result of everything that's happened from the genesis of this whole saga until right now, that everybody in that group has very clear instructions on how to start down their own path to healing. From there, most of the time I'll give my IP my number. Hey man, that later on when you get dope sick and you're out of money, call me. Might say something like that. Or the reason why I'll call it like a counter-strike is because usually some kind of crisis will arise. Most of the time, this is how this happens. Some kind of crisis will arise, and my IP is used to thriving when the family gets sent into crisis.
Yep.
I will make sure that my IP's addiction is in no way able to capitalize off of crises like it has in the past. Usually.
And how would you do that?
Well, like for example, IP doesn't go to treatment. A week later, he calls mom, I owe a drug dealer $100. Please, I need you to send it to me, or they're going to kill me. And
all the things.
Sure, stuff like that. Usually, that sends mom into a tailspin. Mom gives him the money. Dad finds out about it. Dad's mad at mom. The kids find out about it. They all want their $100 too, and everybody's a total mess. Whereas they have clear instructions at that point, like, hey, if he wants something, you call me. So they call me. Hey, he says he owes this drug dealer $100. Blah blah. Mom, listen to me. He doesn't owe the drug dealer $100. And if he did, you are a functioning member of society who doesn't give $100 to drug dealers under any circumstances. So what I want for you to do is put your checkbook away and go to an Al-Anon meeting. From there, usually, a lot of times, that's kind of the breaking point right there. Like, IP suspected something, and he suspected it because we told him in the intervention. And now he has evidence of it that basically the jig is up. So then, in reality, there'll be some kind of negotiation about, well, I'll go to outpatient, but I won't go to inpatient. And, you play that game for a little while, and then they go.
Lisa, I see you nodding your head over there. Is that a familiar?
With patience,
negotiation?
With patience all the time. My brother never really negotiated. I think my brother always knew that when or if he was going to go, he knew what he needed to do. Like outpatient was not going to suffice, right? But I get that with patients all the time. It's like someone who comes into the unit floridly psychotic, totally messed up, and I'm like, we can get addiction support. Like and I've said this pretty openly. Like I'll hold patients in the hospital and do door-to-door with them, and I'll have managers yelling at me being like, why are they still here, discharge them, and I'm like, I'm not discharging them. But a lot of times patients will be like, no, give me the resources, give me the phone number, like I'll connect when I leave, and I'm just like, and again, there's nothing I can do. Like I will talk to them every day like a broken record with the hope that one day for whatever reason they'll bite onto it. But I feel like the people who want the help, usually if I'm there going, hey, like I can, get a team involved and we can send you to residential treatment, they're just like, sign me up. When people are saying, well, just give me the phone number, I'm like, okay. But you do what you can, right? Okay. But can I say one other thing that kind of came up for me just now so this was really interesting. Like one thing about my brother is he stole from our family once. That's it, in 20 years. He, and this was 20 something years ago, stole some tools, I think, from my dad, sold them, and this was back in the crack days. Subsequent to that, he didn't steal from us. And he would be with us, he'd be in the house. He could steal the jewelry, he could steal the stuff, he didn't steal. He also rarely asked us for money. And I think it was very shame-rooted, it was a very last resort. And if he was going to ask, I was like the last person he'd ask. And again, I've never really asked him why that was, but he'd go to my mom. He wouldn't go to dad. He'd rarely come to me, but maybe before he'd go to dad. But one interesting thing is that in the last probably 6 months before he went to treatment, he had called and someone had broken into his place. Right? And it was really funny because of course he called my mom, who called me, and I was just like, oh, like, did they really break in? And and again, I think he was wanting money to go to a hotel for the night and the people who broke in were trouble, right? And it still breaks my heart. But I've asked him about it, and in the past month, and that he's like, no, that happened. Like people really broke in. And I was like, don't give him money.
but there's a reason you said that, right? It's past behaviors. It's all of that. So totally. I don't think a family member can feel guilty for misreading a situation after so many situations were misread to them. Yeah. Right.
Totally.
And
I think, I think as a family, I would say to any family member, I would not send money. I just wouldn't. But I think that's as a family member, I think that's always your thing is it real? What's the chance that this is true, versus I'm being manipulated or they're whatever. And, and you don't know, and a lot of times, and I think it is manipulation and lies and trying to get money and whatever. But it's kind of still breaks your heart a little bit when you hear that there was that story where it was real and and you're just but there's no way to know.
It takes us a long time to break that trust so hard and so far as people that are in addiction that you can't blame people for not believing you. It's what is that, the sky is falling, Chicken Little stuff there. Carl, you had a question, right?
Something that Lisa touched on prior to the break was how she deals with these horrible stories all the time, and she manages to not bring them home. She doesn't lay awake thinking about them. Has there ever been that one IP for you, Rich, that you were just laying in bed and you're like, not that you had regrets, but maybe you were like, maybe I should have said this, or I could have done that, or, has there ever been any times of reflection, I'll say, that you maybe figured out a different strategy that became successful in the future?
Yeah, always, man. That's why, I think that's how a big part of the reason why I've gotten good at this, because I spend that all the time. I'm very self-critical. I'm very, just in my nature, since being in recovery, I'm hard on myself, and I try to take charitable views of those around me and be critical of myself. And that's just,
Imagine if we all treated ourselves like we do our best friend.
wow.
Imagine that, right? Somebody said that. That was just recently. Was that in a ramble that was said to me on another episode? But yeah, imagine that.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
talk
know to
I
interrupt
talk cash
your
shit to my
point,
best friend,
yeah. But you would give him way more room than you give
yeah,
yourself.
that's true.
On
But also it's just
Yep.
like for me, I like setting up my mind that way. You know, I like,
Yep. Yep.
you know, I guess kind of not critical in a bad way, but just,
Yeah. Reviewing your own.
I don't like
stuff,
I don't like to
mean,
give myself any
yeah.
slack. Like if I fall short, then I like to say, you know, you have fallen short and you need to do better next time. But you know, without like drifting into morbid reflection.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the time like that. There was so early on when I first started doing interventions, I did pre-intervention and kind of went over exactly what to say with a particular family, and it was the sister in this case, and she had written a lot of really beautiful stuff down about how she loved her brother and how worried she was and how she wanted him to be there for his nieces and nephews who were her kids as they grew up. And she had all this stuff just written down beautifully. But when she went to deliver it, she stood up over top of him, was pointing at him and yelling. And her words were beautiful, but she was just, her body language just screamed like she was, you know, wanting to fight or something. And I didn't.
She maybe did. You know, a little bit of that too.
I mean, she maybe, but that was a time where like and luckily, you know, we were able to pull that one out of the fire, and that guy went to treatment. But I thought, I was like, man, I don't, in my pre-intervention for the 8, 10, 12 hours that I'm spending with these people, I don't touch on body language at all. How much body language training have I had to have to do my job? I'm not telling these people anything about body language. What's the matter with you, Rich? So yeah, from then on, now like I do a whole spiel about, you know, nonverbal communication with the family. So yeah, like that's
kidding, eh?
yeah, like that's one
That's
instance.
impressive.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Again, that's another example, Rich, how you seem to be, and I don't know because I don't know any other interventionists directly. Well, I guess I know one, Devin, now, and I feel like he would model some of your behaviors. But, yeah, I don't have anything else to compare to, but this is pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool, some of the things you do.
Thanks.
So, yeah. What else, guys? Who's got something else they want to jump in with here? I mean, we're well over the hour mark now. So
Well, I guess in that vein, just to tag something just that I was thinking of before, Lisa, when you said that like your brother got led up the stairs and you were all like standing at the door, that like in my mind, like I don't know this Andy person or you know, this is not any kind of judgment on him or what he does, and also fully recognizing that I have the gift of hindsight. But when I hear he got led up the stairs and everybody was standing at the door, my mind goes, wrong. Not how you do it. You know, because of that like nonverbal
totally.
communication.
no kidding, right?
I agree.
Yep. So yourself now, Rich, in your career, are you the interventionist with your company, or do you have other people working with you or working up to that point, or how's that work?
I'm the only CIP. I have full reign over all of the intervention cases. I'll bring my wife along with me. She's got a lot of experience in the field, and she's working on her CIP. Her name's Casey. She would be a really good guest if you ever want to hear about like the guts of treatment.
Anytime. And
she's the one who actually initially got in contact with you. I was actually driving back from we were doing an intervention together.
I was thinking that's funny that you said that 10 seconds ago. I was like, I think that's right. And then you mentioned her, so yeah.
We were driving back from, we had done it because I'll bring her along on interventions, and still like she'll sit second chair is what they call it.
Yeah.
So yeah, she'll do that with me, but that's it. She doesn't fly solo. Nobody else have I even brought in as a second chair, and then everyone else is companions or drivers or stuff like that.
Okay. So is that something that now your business model is your business model, but I feel like anybody who's really good at what they do, and you seem to be that. I mean, again, I've got nothing else to compare to, so I'm pretty easy to impress. But legitimately, you seem to have a much better handle on some of the nuances as far as the family and that goes than other stories I've heard. It seems a waste if you're not teaching somebody else to do that, right? It seems like, not a waste, but it seems like you kind of owe that now to, and so do you have people up and coming that want to do that, or do you have people that approach you to do it, or should I move to Florida? Fuck, I'm not moving to Florida. But
Florida's great, man.
I want to do it.
I like Florida.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be a little
like
warm
the idea
for you,
of the weather, but yeah.
Gators and snakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like reptiles.
Man, people have asked, and I kind of categorize those people into two different classes. There's the people who think that that I go on lunches and do podcasts and make a whole bunch of money, and they want that too.
Yeah.
And once I start telling those people, like what I was telling you guys, like what the board wants to get your CIP credential, they kind of disappear pretty quick. A couple people have asked me more seriously, and they've been more willing to put in the work. It boils down to, I don't know. I want more time. I want to get better at the craft, and because I don't want to. I know that there's still things that I'm going to find that I need to tweak and that I need to do better, and that I just, I need to get more experience. So I'll teach people eventually, but I want to get really
just
good
to be devil's
first.
advocate, though. To be devil's advocate, in the short time that we've spoken, Rich, I can confidently say you're never going to have it figured out, because you're going to keep beating yourself up, right?
Yeah.
Right. You're going to keep learning, and you're going to keep doing what you're doing. So, at what point, I guess, right? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. we're just two guys having a conversation.
Yeah. No.
Right?
Well, in the ski, man, I'm still new. Like, if you think, like I said, I started doing interventions right before COVID, so that's 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, what if I were, what if I were something else? If I were a welder who had been welding for 4 or 5 years, or like I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so like we have belt ranking systems. 4 or 5 years, you're blue, maybe purple belt. That's not, you're qualified to teach like kind of like kids or like very beginner adult classes at that point. So to me, like, yes, there will always be that element of like wanting to more finely hone the edge and stuff. And I'll pass that on to the people who I teach one day. But for now, I want to get better at it. And I don't have time, man. I have 4 kids. I run a business, and unfortunately a lot of what I have to do is not interventions. Interventions is what I love. I would do interventions for free if I could. Just to putz around the world and have something to entertain myself. It's just really enjoyable to me, and it helps people. But dude, I have to do a lot of like the other business stuff that comes along with it. I have to like go out and spread the word about what it is that we do, and hope that the phone rings, and that we can somehow like alchemize helping addicts and their families into paying my electric bill. It's just
right. I get you. Yeah.
I also feel like, there may be a day when the right person comes along, and you'll just know that that's the right person, and it'll just be the right time for you and the right person.
Like the karate kid.
Because I agree with Chuck though. Like, I think that it sounds like you're really good at what you do, and sometimes like I don't even think it's necessarily just the number of years, right? Like, I bet you there are people out there who've been doing this for 20 years who are not as good at it as you are. Like, I think there's certain things that we're just made to do, and we know how to do it, and it just works. Yep. But yeah, I suspect maybe one day the right person will cross your path, and the stars will align, and you'll be able to pass on some of what and because the world needs more of you.
Thanks.
Definitely does.
They do, right?
Appreciate
that. In turn, I've said that to Lisa a few times too. So, right? Right.
Well, not to get into semantics here either, Rich, but there was a lot of you have to. Remember, you get to do that.
Yes.
You get to run a business. You get to do all that.
So I might push back on you a little bit.
You couldn't do that from under the bridge. You couldn't do that from under the bridge.
That's true. I guess
so. Now you get to do it.
On one hand, yes. On the other hand, I will push back on that because that's my way of like demarcating verbally that like I feel like I get to do interventions. That's awesome, and I love that. The other stuff is like if I want to do the interventions, then you have to, whatever. But I guess this is my way of demarcating that. Like the other stuff that is involved with owning a business, like that's just a means to an end for me. That's just like an unfortunate byproduct of, yeah, you know what I mean? It's cool. It's fun, like I have a few other things that I want to get into. I want to open some other businesses that are going to be a lot less time consuming. It's cool to own a business. I like it. It's the like American dream or whatever, but and probably the Canadian dream too. I don't know. I open like a maple syrup factory or something. Sorry, is that racist?
Not for where you are.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah, right. Jeez, no.
But no, man, it's cool. No, I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, I just feel like Canadians are a group that you're kind of allowed to make fun of.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about straight guys. You're kind of allowed to make fun of straight guys.
Well, we feel the same way about the entire thing. So there's that, right?
That's true.
And by south, we mean anything below the 49th parallel.
Which one's the 49th?
Yeah, right. See, right there. You just did it for us. Thank you.
Florida man. Thank you.
Which one's the 49th?
49th parallel. It's the border between Canada and the U.S. That's
I live really far away from that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I know it's like a whole country next door, right? So anyway.
But aren't you guys? I mean, you guys are basically
Love
America,
what you do.
right? Like, aren't you guys like basically America though? You're not like Mexico, right?
No, we're damn near communist compared
Really?
to America. Yeah, we are much more left wing. Your Democrats are way further right than our right wingers.
Now you don't know our Democrats, bro. We got some freaking weirdos here.
The extreme left being different, right? But like your typical Democrat would be way further to the right than our left-wing politicians here would be. Absolutely. Weird. Yeah. For us, they're the liberal party.
But we're not that different. I mean, that like,
you're amazingly different.
I don't know. Like, it's not like China.
We all want to feed our families and go to jobs and all that stuff. But fundamentally, there's, I don't know. Right. 50% income tax.
No way.
That's what we pay. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Dude, you guys should have stood up to the king for this.
That's at a pretty low threshold. I think 50% kicks in around, I don't know, 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year.
Dude, so if I make 60 grand a year, I owe the government 30 grand a year?
Oh, you don't owe it to them. They take it.
Oh, yeah?
Unless, of course, unless you're a business owner, in which case. And then it don't stop there, right? Then there's the fuel tax and the smoke tax and the alcohol tax, and then the GST on top of all that tax. And then, oh yeah, man! And
then the property tax, the carbon tax that charges tax on the taxes that you pay when you buy
serious?
something.
There would be so much tea in so many harbors.
You guys go on about free healthcare in Canada.
Right? It ain't free.
Nothing's free here. Yeah. And everything's more expensive, and our dollar's not worth as much either. So there's that, right?
I mean, to be fair, our dollar's not worth $1 at this point either.
Yeah, well, try to here, right? So, yeah. Anyway, we kind of got off topic there. No, that is my fault. It's always my fault. I'm the host, right? But I think that brings us to my favorite part of the show, and that is the Daily Gratitudes. Today's Daily Gratitudes are brought to you by
Yacha Treatment Centers in Phuket, Thailand. They are a clinic run by clinicians, not a business run by businessmen. And they know that where addiction is the smoke, trauma is the fire. Learn more at yatracenters.com. That's YATRACENTRE.com.
Let's get a couple out of you, Rich, and a couple out of you, Carl. How's that sound?
Sure. I'm going to go first.
Oh, and we're going to get one out of Lisa because we know that is 4 months yesterday, so we're going to do that too. So let's go. Let's get yours first, Rich. Let's get yours first.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Couple things. Number one, grateful as always to be on Ash's Awesome podcast. I really thoroughly enjoy this. This is good for me. I feel like I mentally, like I can be kind of a mess. Like there's a lot of trains running at once. up here, and like
You just fit right in.
well, it just like talking to you guys, like I kind of like.
They're just Canadians. I don't have to.
No, just being able to talk about it. I'm grateful that y'all are doing this because it helps me get my shit situated, and I feel like I bring a better version of me to my families. And then, as always, my wife and kids. Before Rich the interventionist, before Rich whatever, I'm father to my kids, and I'm husband to my wife, and that's what matters to me. I'm forever grateful for my role in this world as it pertains to those humans.
Yeah, you're what, 4 weeks into being married now? We talked about that last episode, but that never made it into the final cut. So, yeah, 4 weeks is it?
Something like that, yeah.
Today? Something like that?
Am I supposed to be counting?
Before you get home. Yeah, you're supposed to be fucking counting. Come on, pull it together, man. Do better, Rich. Do better, right? Yeah, I feel like it is 4 weeks today, though, for some reason. If I know that and you don't, yeah, that's why I'm thinking that. Oh, and we lost. Okay, Lisa, let's move on to you.
I am grateful that my brother is 4 months and 1 day sober, and that he's back in my life. It's like I feel like I've got my brother back right now. So I'm thankful for that every single day. I'm actually going out there on Tuesday to spend a week out there.
Oh, great.
And
great.
so, yeah, so
Okay.
I'm looking forward to getting to spend more time with him. I'm grateful for the fact that this will be like my third trip getting to hang out with him and spend time with him this summer. It's the most time I've got to spend with my brother in probably over 10 years.
No kidding.
So yeah, so that's what I'm most grateful for.
Yeah, that just warms my heart. A lot of trepidation leading up, as he's come through in treatment, and it's like, oh, I hope this works out. I hope this works out. So
Every
I can't
day.
imagine what it must be like for you, right? Yeah. That's
But
wonderful.
I try to not get stuck in that headspace. I mean, it's always there. Like I'm not, naive to this. I know what the risks are. But to me, it's, like if I could spend my day today worrying about what the future holds, and all that does is rob me of today, or I could just be happy that today he's well and he's sober and he's safe and he's healthy and he's happy. And so I try to stay there.
That's great. That's great. Carl, what do you got for us for some gratitudes?
Well, first and foremost, I am grateful for Casper. We've been doing a lot of work on the house lately, and really, we work really good as a team here.
Yep.
My second gratitude, I'm going to give to you, Chuck. I am grateful for your sobriety. I'm grateful for your resilience in getting this podcast, maintaining it even through all the tech issues that you've had in the last few weeks. I know it's summertime, so the viewership goes down a bit. So if there's ever a time to have problems, now would be the time.
Yeah.
And lastly, I'm grateful for this platform that you've given, not only to me and Lisa, but all of the guests that come on here. And we're really just trying to reach out and give people some helpful tools and let them know that everybody that's been on here has been going through the same struggles that you've been going through. Stick with it. Use a love model.
Yeah. Well,
that's it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah. I got so much to be grateful for right now. Of course, it kind of seems like this back and forth thing that Canadians do. I know you wouldn't appreciate that as much as we do, Rich, but that's being polite. Anyway, no, I'm grateful for all of you, and for the final gratitude, though, guys, it's to you, the listeners, guys. Please keep doing what you're doing. Please keep commenting if you're on the Spotify. Hey, now on YouTube as well. If you're watching this right now, hit that. I'm going to do this, and maybe I'll get the button in the right spot. Right, hit the like, the the thing. I don't know. I've never done this before that way, so I don't know if I'm doing it right. Right? Hit the subscribe button and the notification button and all that. And if you're on Apple, leave a review or a rating. Well, I do appreciate it very, very much, because every time you do any one of these things, you are getting me a little bit closer to living my best life. My best life is to make a humble living, spreading the message. The message is this: if you are in active addiction right now, today could be the day. Today could be the day that you start that lifelong journey. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, call into detox, go to a meeting, do whatever the hell it is you got to do to get that journey started, because it is so much better than the alternative. And if you are the loved one of somebody who is suffering in addiction right now, you've just taken the time to listen to the Weekend Ramble. You just take one more minute out of your day, text that person, let them know they're loved. Use the words,
"You are loved."
that little glimmer of hope just might be the thing that brings it back.